Why, hello, Hawkins. Are you going to read for some more? I'm looking forward to the rest of the story.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why I'm here.
Oh, this is good.
So,
I'm so happy.
let's get at it.
All right.
For those who've been following the story thus far, we know that Michael Bronstein has gone down to Skid Row to locate a guy named Conrad, who has written a best-selling ghetto novel called St. Julian Street. He found him, and Bronstein is going through a lot of trials and tribulation with the guy because he's such an unconventional character. He's not your ordinary novelist looking for appreciation and so forth and so on. As a matter of fact, he kind of ridicules the whole idea. So what we're at now, what we're into is Bronstein spending an evening with Conrad on the streets.
Oh, no.
Conrad can well afford to live in a nice place and so forth and so on. But at one point, as a catatonic schizophrenic, he lived near crack on the sidewalks in downtown Los Angeles. So he's kind of addicted to that lifestyle. An hour later, sprawled on a piece of flattened Kleenex box, a half yard away from the section of pavement Emmanuel Conrad had once spent 3 years attached to, I stared up at a troubled urban sky. I had no idea that downtown LA was so busy after dark, after closing time. Sleeping on a piece of cardboard on the sidewalk was Conrad's idea, a way to wake me up. Conrad, I gotta ask you, why are we out here? His voice was a blend of all the stuff we were living in. It's not a good question, Michael. I'm out here, as you said, because I'm in my world, my element, as you would say in your City Beat magazine. Why are you out here? This guy was doing major work on my inner skull. What the hell was I doing out here sleeping on the streets? Well, let's say I'm doing research for my story. It'll be more authentic if I live it, you know what I'm saying? But that doesn't explain why you're out here. You got a place in the Ghetto Sketchers Hotel. I saw it. His reply took so long I thought he had gone to sleep. The sound of his voice was strangely solemn. Michael, what you have to understand is that old habits are hard to break, even out here. I feel at one with this. I would like to say that I drifted off to an easy sleep because I was dog-ass tired, but it didn't happen. I kept thinking back to the story of this woman who had been stomped to death a few yards away from where we were days ago. The gruesome image of someone being stomped to death caused me to react to the heavy sounds that vibrated through the concrete a block away. I didn't sleep well on the streets that night. Dawn. I woke up thinking about what my parents would have thought about where I was. I looked over at Conrad, his face, his hands laced behind his head, staring up at the skyscrapers clustered around us. You know, this is a first for me. He didn't change his position, unlace his palms behind his head, or even acknowledge my presence, but he answered me with a question. First time you've ever slept out of doors? First time I've ever slept out of doors on the sidewalk. I've gone on lots of camping trips. If a smile could ever be labeled sarcastic, I saw it on Conrad's face. He didn't say anything, he simply smiled. My deadline was met. My interview with Mr. Emmanuel Conrad, Skid Row novelist, black spiritual cousin of Bukowski, was met. Shirley Brown, editor bitch of City Beat, was really pleased, but just a bit miffed by my reluctance to front it with Officer Mendoza and Blondie. Come on, Mike. You've had years of Tai Chi. You could have taken both of them. Think about the story. And they would have shot me with their little guns. Oh, well, glad we didn't lose you because you were trying to be macho. Never liked editors who always gave me the vibe that they were failed writers who knew how to cancel out serious emotions. Shirley Brown acquired that status big time in her editing of Emmanuel Conrad, Ghetto Artist. Shirley, the guy is a writer. He's not an artist. Not only that, if I may be so bold, he's not a ghetto artist. He's a world-class writer. Have you read Oshima, Fuentes, Singer, Miller, Tanizaki, Soyinka, Wright, Baldwin, Kazantzakis? Emmanuel Conrad is in that category. Get out of here. I'm serious. Have you read St. Julian Street? 3 days later, Shirley emailed me. Open pages for you. Finish the Kwanzaa piece. Kwanzaa? What Kwanzaa? What the hell was this control freak PMS suspect talking about? I emailed back, Kwanzaa piece? She replied, yeah, that's what it is. Proceed or accept my replacement now. I understood clearly, either do additional coverage or step aside to allow baby Blue Eyes to go down and trample over all the ground you've cultivated. We'll proceed, I emailed, and packed a small backpack of essentials. I knew where to go to hook up with Conrad. That took me off the hooks, so I thought. I hadn't realized what a gypsy he was. Oh, Conrad up north, baby. Look, can you give Mama a little spare change? Up north, where? I think he went to Palo Alto. Palo Alto? For what? The weasel woman who had previously wheedled 20s out of me suddenly became a downtrodden informant. I think he went up to the Palo Alto VA for a prostrate examination. I slid a fire spot in her hand and took careful note of her surprised expression. I don't know, baby. Look, could you? Uncharacteristically, I dismissed her would-be solicitation with a snide expression. Been here, done this. Nothing to do but hang out. Skid Row shit took place immediately or never. Or maybe tomorrow. I decided to hang out. 2 weeks later, after I had become addicted to crack.
Uh-oh.
That's what I said too. Conrad got up on me. Yo, Mike, they tell me you're a dope fiend now. I looked into his face as though it was a mirror that was lying to me. Me, Michael Bronstein, reporter for The Beat, a dope fiend? Get out of here. What could I say? No, Conrad, I am not a dope fiend. But despite my denial, I knew he was right. And if I didn't immediately address all of the issues inherent to being a crackhead, I would have problems with my psyche for years. I went the coldest turkey you could ever go. I went on a water-only fast for 3 days and dreamed about the crack pipe constantly. No, sir. I will not be a dope fiend. Some say it and never mean it. I said it and I meant it. Conrad took careful but casual note of my struggle, my jihad, if you will. I was proud of myself. Conrad thought that my withdrawal absence should be the norm. If a motherfucker can't leave drugs alone, he's worse than a child molester, because he's abusing himself and all those who love him, her, it. He apologized for inflicting Dr. B on me. Don't apologize for her, man. She's a treasure. I know, that's why I tolerate her. Tell me about her. Well, her real name is Kujichagulia. Self-determination, if you need a translation from the Swahili. And that's just about as much as anybody else can tell you about her. People call her Dr. B because that's the way she strikes you. She be a doctor, she be. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't quite certain if I truly understood, but I nodded. Yes, I know what you're saying. The hell with Dr. B. Let me introduce you to somebody. You say you gave up drugs, correct? You ain't no dope fiend, right? It's hard to argue with Conrad. Conrads make the truth swim up at you. I'm sure Tiger Woods and Bill Russell must have made white guys pee on themselves the night before. Was I a dope fiend? Yes, Mr. Conrad, I'm not a dope fiend, and I have no intention of becoming one, thank you. Now, where do we go from here? Mike, stop. You ain't drug-free, and you never will be again. You lost your drug cherry. What I'm asking is, can you not get fucked up when you ain't supposed to? Now, that's drug-free. You ain't drug-free and never will be again. You're just free of drugs. Gotta remember one big thing, Bronstein. Drugs is powerful. The man's name was Charlie Jackson. He was an Iraqi vet, and I'll go a little slower from here on to give you some sense of how charged up this guy was. Number one, his speech pattern was staccato machine gun, quick, fast bursts of word bullets. Why did Conrad want me to meet this guy? Whatever. Charlie stood in front of his two-man A-frame tent as though he was waiting for an inspection. Ramrod attention. Charlie, this is Mike. I talked to you about him. Oh, yeah, I remember. We shook hands as Conrad eased off the scene. Be back in a minute, go up the street here. Charlie Jackson and I posed in place watching Emmanuel Conrad's broad back lurch up the street. What the hell is this all about? Charlie Jackson didn't seem surprised by Conrad stepping away from the scene. I was simply puzzled. Why would you bring me over to meet this guy and leave? Charlie opened a flap to his tent and gestured for me to go inside. I stooped and duck-walked inside. The interior was deep, dim, and immaculate. I crawled to a low pillar on the right side of the tent. Oh, no, not there. Guests sit facing the door. I crawled across to the proper place and did as much of a half lotus as my range of motion-challenged legs would permit. Charlie baby eased himself into a full lotus and sat quietly, looking at some spot just above my head. Nice place you got here. It was the most inane remark I could think of. God, did I say that? Here's a guy living in a tent on 4th and Los Angeles Street, and I'm giving him a compliment on the atmosphere of his home. He smiled shyly and didn't seem to find any irony in my uncouth remark. His open-armed reaction seemed to say, well, it ain't much, but it's mine. Can I offer you something? He asked politely. I think he took my stunned surprise at the civility of the question as yes. He crawled over to a small bread box, pulled a couple of saltine crackers out of a pack, and poured me a cup of water from a 1-gallon container. Thank you. What else could I say? I munched on a cracker and sipped water. Charlie Jackson didn't seem to feel at ease or uncomfortable because of the silence. I did. Mr. Jackson? You can call me Charlie, it's cool. Charlie, do you have any idea why Conrad wanted us to get together? Well, he told me you're a reporter for this big-time magazine and that you might be interested in my story. I felt trapped. What if I wasn't interested in this story? What if it wasn't a compelling, interesting story? No, scratch that. Conrad knew what an interesting story was all about. 2 short hours later, we stood outside of his tent, having an intense parting conversation about the effects of global warming on the poor and homeless. As I casually looked around at the cluster of tents and tarps that cluttered up the sidewalk around us, Conrad strolled away from a small group of people on the other side of the street. "Hey, Mike, how about buying me a cup of coffee?" He waved goodbye to Charlie Johnson, who responded with a stiff-arm military salute. I tried to return his salute.
An army.
Interesting guy.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought you would think that. Passing the Skid Row regulars on the way to Emmanuel Conrad's favorite greasy spoon, I felt for the first time that I had some demographic clues to what I was looking at. Loners. These were the folks who placed their shelters and themselves at a discreet distance from everyone else. Quartets were arranged in quartets and sometimes in quintets. Groups were a transit hodgepodge of quartets and groups. And finally, there were a few villagers. Villagers had to have some legitimate source of income and were composed mainly of people who wanted to go into the next step in their world. Lower, middle class.
Okay.
Conrad, that guy might be a psycho-sociological genius. But since I don't know a hell of a lot about either one, what can I say? Don't say anything. Just write about it. Let your readers decide. The coffee was just as bad as usual. And when I ordered a slice of pie to accompany my coffee, Conrad actually laughed aloud. What's funny? You are, pal. I can't ever recall anybody wanting to eat a slice of that shit. Not even when I was crazy. I had to agree with him after one forkful. It was very bad pie. Damn, if this is so bad, why don't they remove it from view? You'd have to be out of your mind to order. Conrad shook his head and rolled his eyes skyward, a now familiar gesture that meant, number one, you're crazy. Number two, what did I tell you? Number three, now what? And what did you learn? Charlie's still having nightmares, horror dreams from his 3 tours over there. Over there, over there, over there. He made me think of the Vietnamese vets who wrote and talked about going back to the world. I tried to force him to connect the war in Vietnam with the war in Iraq. That's the sole point with a lot of us, Michael. A lot of people want to call it the Vietnam in the sand. It wasn't that. It had its own characteristics. Maybe what we might have in common was things we did. In Iraq, we did some stuff these people will never forgive us for, that these people will guarantee us a place in their hell forever. He remained cool, almost detached, scatting about the loss of Conrad's people he hadn't known about. This is the flashback to Charlie in his tent. Swazinski, head blown off by a roadside attack.
In Vietnam.
Popsicle, chest blown out by a rocket. They killed a lot of us as we drove through, but we killed a lot of them in retaliation. While they were still talking governmental bullshit, we were being killed. And, Allah be praised, we were still able to respond. Are you a Muslim? I felt compelled to ask. Charlie Johnson returned his nebulous gaze to a point above my head for a few weeks before answering, well, let me put it to you this way, old chap. His sudden lapse into a plummy, upper-class English British accent was startling, yet right on the mark. I am a Muslim, and so is every other human being on this planet who was born head first, body facing east. Sounds like Charlie was in one of his good medication moods. Meditation? No, Michael. Medication, not meditation.
Oh.
Did he talk about drugs he'd offer to sell you any? I reacted indignantly to go on record. No, he did not. Well, I guess you may have a leg up on your dope thing. If you could spend 2 hours with one of the most notorious dealers on the block. Yet I guess you must have a firm grip on your drug problem.
Interesting.
I hated to have Conrad talk about me as though I was a drug addict. I had only smoked crack for 2 weeks or so. How could he say that I had a drug problem? Denial didn't do me much good. He was right. I still had a craving that I could easily identify. I wanted to get high again. It was an impulse I had to fight all the time. Iraq was a peculiar, extremely dry psycho-sociological hell for many of us. I knew at least 10 guys who went crazy because they couldn't cope with constant, uncertain, dangerous, monotonous, mad circumstances. They just couldn't cope. Charlie Jackson. I signaled for our bib-suited overhaul waitress to splash more battery acid into our cups. Conrad made a wry face. One does become quite fond of this terrible stuff after a bit, doesn't one?
Lord.
He sounded exactly like Charlie Jackson. After 5 years of them, I still hated the bi-weekly staff meeting at City Beat. There was a medieval quality about the way things were done. Shirley Brown took sadistic delight in drawing and quartering people around the torture chamber table, or breaking them on the rack, or whipping them with her cat-o'-nine tail. Over the years, I must have witnessed at least 7 or 8 nervous breakdowns. I lost count of the number of times I saw people around me about to cry or cry out. The only justification for all of this cruelty, so far as Shirley Brown, editor, was concerned, was superiority of product. CDB is the best magazine of its type in this country, and on my watch is going to remain the best. Anyone have a problem with that? Now then, let's deal with a few sore spots. Frank, your hard-hitting piece of pedophilia is about as hard as a powder puff. No, it's about as hard as a soft sponge. What's with you, Frank? Are you losing it? If I can look back a couple of issues, you used to have a pair. What happened? Look, big guy, after people finished reading this piece, I wanted to be gripping the offspring with fear. Are you reading my lips? Shirley, you want to say something, Frank? That was the way she intimidated us, with a mean question and the coldest stare I'd ever seen in a human eye. A beautifully sculptured, beige-colored African-American woman. There were times when I found it hard to believe that she was an African-American because she was so Teutonic. She was one thing on the outside and definitely something else on the inside. Miss Wing, we wanted a human interest story with an edge to it, a little bite. I do not want to be forced to read any more of this little old lady and her big tabby cat stuff, okay? I don't need oriental sensitivity, plum blossoms, and all of that crap. I want edge, withering logic, a unique angle, okay? Either you give it to me, or we'll get somebody else to give it to me, okay? Poor Susan Wing. She had come to City Beach straight out of an exclusive women's college in upstate Pennsylvania. Obviously, she was not going to be around for more than a couple issues. Shirley Brown had a way of squeezing the juice out of you. Frank, you've been around here the longest. What's the skinny on this witch? What can I say to you, Mike? She's a witch. Bob, which concert did you go to? From all the applause I heard from where I'm sitting, the concert was very well received. I think you should review your review and come up with something a little more positive, a lot more enthusiastic, okay?
Wow.
We all hated that, okay? It wasn't 2 letters that deserved a question mark. Coming from her, it was a command, okay? Bob Barker, the long-suffering music critic for City Beat, nodded in agreement with her, okay? And gritted his teeth. Kwame Kote, your analysis of the African political scene hasn't gelled. You got one more issue to climb up a little higher on the stick, or else we're going to have to dig another Ethiopian out of the woodpile. Kwame Kote, a seasoned newsman, fresh from the Ghanaian Voice in Accra, Ghana, West Africa, looked extremely puzzled. I'm not an Ethiopian, he whispered. A few of us had quietly snickered. Shirley Brown withered our humorous reaction with a glare that swept around the table. I know you're not an Ethiopian, Kwame. Maybe that's what we need around here, a real live Ethiopian. As usual, her attempt to be funny missed the mark. There was something malevolent about her sense of humor. It frequently skirted racism, anti-Semitism, gender discrimination, outright dislike for most people and things. Mm-hmm. Okay, Bronstein, you can stop doodling and giggling now. Uh-oh. I could feel the air in the room suddenly go up 50 degrees. She's just heating it up with her anger. Jesus H. Christ, Mike! I sent you down to Skid Row, a choice assignment, to interview this chic new ghetto artist, this Emmanuel Conrad person. Get lots of local color and flavor. Put a face on Skid Row, not to find Mother Teresa or Lloyd Gandhi behind every piece of cardboard on the sidewalk.
Right.
Listen up, everybody. I'm going to give you capsule accounts of the last 3 people Michael Bronstein found on Skid Row. And I'm going to do the same thing too. After a short break, to have this wonderful pasta that we're about to have that's being prepared in the kitchen. Massimo! How is that? Is that going? Okay, okay. Pasta fazool with, yeah, we'll take that.
Fairly
Shrimps.
well. Looking forward
Shrimps
to it.
again.
Shrimps again.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, you know, you got to suffer sometime.
Until.
So we'll get back to this and
after brunch.
after lunch.
After lunch. Thank you.